All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Ryan Heitschmidt. I'll be facilitating cattle chats for most of the day. I do want to remind you, so in the back we have little headsets that you can wear for kind of a better listening. And then, so the way this is going to run, we're going to try and ensure this runs smoothly. So we'll have 20 minutes, or we'll have the presentation for 20 minutes, followed by a 5-minute Q&A session. But if you don't get a question answered, the speakers will be over in the meeting area right next to here. And so hopefully you can continue conversations and get any questions you want answered. So we'll go ahead and get started. Our first speaker talking about tools, techniques, and strategies to improve grazing. We have Rob Cook, the chairman of the National Grazing Lands Coalition.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ryan. Well, good morning, everyone. Appreciate y'all being here, spending a little time with us today. Like Ryan said, I'm Rob Cook, chairman of the National Grazing Lands Coalition. I represent the Society for Range Management on our board. I also am the director of business development for Bammert Seed Company in Muleshoe, Texas. We have a cow-calf operation on the seed farm, along with the stocker operation. And my wife and I are involved in her family's dryland farming operation in eastern New Mexico. Just a little bit about NatGLC if you're not familiar with us. We're a producer-led and driven organization made up of producers that represent 13 member organizations within our board. And we have a network of state and regional coalitions, and we're an advocate for producer needs. We try to strive to provide resources and training to grazing land producers across the nation. So kind of our 4 key strategies to do that is promote the value of healthy grazing lands, communicate the message of stewardship, develop national state partnerships, and then advocate for our grazing lands and the managers and their needs all across the nation with our partners and with industry and with basically anyone who'd listen. So today we're going to talk a little bit about tools, techniques, and strategies to help improve grazing. Real quick, just go over a few things that, in my experience, draw out a few ideas that are useful, little tips for grazing land managers. The folks that I've worked with in our operations, to me, these little things that we're going to bring out and talk about are pretty useful, and these thoughts are not easy wins, but they're easy concepts to talk about and kind of get started the conversation deeper about grazing management. So first are goals. Regardless if we have a very detailed written out grazing management plan or if our management plan is in our head, we have to have some goals. And if we write those goals down, research shows we're 42% more likely to accomplish that. If we have a goal written down somewhere where we kind of look at it every day, we're going to, no matter what it is, we're going to be more likely to accomplish it. And they could be big arching goals, or they could be smaller goals. Like I want to calve in a certain pasture. I want to wean in a certain pasture. Or I want to make improvements to specific pastures or specific areas with my grazing management. Maybe it's all the above, but whatever the goal is to meet that goal, we kind of have to measure, right? We kind of have to do a little bit of monitoring. And when I start talking about measuring and monitoring, a lot of times I see people's eyes glass over, right? It doesn't have to be hard. If we're going to do it, it can't be hard, and it can't be time consuming, right? So there's some real easy things that we can do. These range sticks are phenomenal tools. It can be as easy as getting average height before we move into a pasture and average height after we move into pasture. Just 5-10 measurements in a representative area, and we start writing that down and looking back at that, and it's going to be amazing what that actually tells us. I noticed there's some of these range sticks over at the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef booth. If you need one to take home, actually, I saw that the other day. But it's a great tool, and the more you start doing that, the more value you see in that. The more places you're going to find to use this simple range stick. Precipitation records. This is Hugh Aljo's with Noble Research Institute. This is his yearly water table. And what this does is we all kind of, I think a lot of us keep track of rain. But what rain's effective? If we get an event with 5 inches, how much of that is effective rainfall? We need to look back year after year and understand how our rain came and when it came. We start tying that precipitation back to some other things we're measuring, like height in and height out in our grazing, and it can really start telling us a story, right? How are my pastures reacting? What did they look like based off of the rain that I got? And it really starts, you can start seeing the effects of your management, and it can start painting a picture. And if we have this written down, it's really invaluable data, and it's probably really easy to use, actually. I can't stress how valuable photo points are, taking a photo every year. And so this is the app that I have, and the reason I have it is because it's the first one I Googled, and it was free, and it works. So I'm not advocating for this. I'm just saying there's plenty of them out there. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to take a picture. Picture are worth so much. But looking in the same direction every time. And it'll list on your picture when you save it when it was, what direction you were looking, the date, the time, and whatever else you want on it, so that you can catalog these and look back, right? And so I can't stress photo points enough, really, and the importance of them. This is kind of my demonstration. If you've seen or heard me talk about photo points, you've seen these pictures, so I'm sorry about it. But so this is my daughter, and I've got a son too, but my daughter made the presentation because we all know how dads are with little girls, right? But so the most important thing, one of the most important things, one of the things that I feel that I have to protect most in the world, I wouldn't remember what she looked like, and that was 6 years ago. That's her. Without a photo, I wouldn't remember the little gnome there. I would think I would, but I'm not sure I would. I think we remember our pastures, right? A lot of times we remember the really highs and we remember the really lows, and we don't remember much in between, or we exaggerate things, right? So the most important thing in the world to me, without these photo points, that little gnome, I wouldn't have an accurate representation of what she looked like. And it's more important to my pastures, right? So that's just the value of pictures and how you can use those pictures to look back when we're doing all of our measurements to make sure we're meeting our goals. It can really start telling us a story. Really cheap, free, really easy to do, doesn't take much time. Another thing that I think we really need to all understand, and I think most of us overestimate our grazable acres for several different reasons. But if we're overestimating our grazable acres, we're automatically overstocked, right? So it could be brush canopy. It could be species composition. We might have a 60-acre pasture and 20 of it's 3-on. I can't give the same value to that 3-on species because it doesn't have the grazing value. So I have to reduce some of the grazing acres in that pasture. It might be topography. Maybe it's too steep. It might be as easy as roads, right? So if you take the average road, let's say it's 20 foot wide, there's 2.4 acres in a mile of road, right? And we think about in our pastures how many miles that we have that we're probably accounting for those in our grazable acres. Depending on where you're at, I hear a lot of people striving for, 3 acres to an animal unit, a mile of road, and we're an animal unit overstocked. So I think, and I'm very guilty of this a lot of times too. I've got a 100-acre pasture, and I go to figuring my forage that I'm going to have to meet my demand, and I very rarely is every acre in that pasture grazable. So that's a quick tip that I think we all need to keep in mind. And that kind of leads us to our management. So Dr. Mariah Johnson and I gave this presentation a couple of years ago. So this is what these numbers are from. So we're going to get into some dollar figures here, and we can discuss and argue about if the dollar figures are right. But the point is to think through this process, right? The dollar figures might not exactly match your operation, but think about the principle. So if you look on the graph, the lines with the squares going down, that's our carrying capacity over time. It's showing it's going down as our brush canopy is going up, right? So as our brush canopy increases, we have less forage available to graze. And so there's less pounds there, we have less revenue. So there's a cost to not doing maintenance. There's a cost to not doing some of these practices. There's a cost to do them, but can we afford not to? So we're gonna make some assumptions. We're making an assumption that we've got 1,000 acres and we're gonna weed 500 pounds in October, and we've got 41 cows on this place, right? We're gonna market 35 cows. Well, we notice as the years go by, our carrying capacity dips off. We're also gonna assume that we're going to stock appropriately. So as our carrying capacity goes down, we're gonna have fewer cows on our property, which we don't normally do, and that's another different conversation we could have. But as the years go by, at year 18, so we start with 0 with no brush. At year 18, we're gonna have to start destocking a little bit. So we're gonna have 28 calves come up as a crop, year 23 is 18, and so on. So if we just use the figures for a 500-pound animal, we kind of average steers and heifers, that's the loss of revenue from not managing our pastures and our reduction in grazable acres. This example is mesquite. It might be other things, but not spending the money and not understanding the importance of some of those secondary management practices could cost us in the long run. So it's just something to think through. The concept of supplementation versus substitution. So if we're supplementing, if we're giving animals something that completes or makes an addition to their diet, that's one thing. A substitution is when we're feeding hay to take the place of forage. We don't have enough forage and we're having to feed it a hay. That's a substitution. If we're in a substitution event, we're overstocked. And that could be fine. We just have to understand and know that we're overstocked, that we have more demand from our animals than we have forage production on our property. And so sometimes we do that temporarily, sometimes we do that because of conditions, sometimes economically. But when you're making those decisions, we just have to realize that if we're substituting forage with hay, we are overstocked. And we are having an effect on our grazing lands. So this example is from West Texas Rangelands. Great Facebook page, social media page. If you're looking for something to follow, they do a great job. So we're going to say our carrying capacity is 100 cows, but we're stocked at 120. So we have enough forage to meet the demand for 100 cows, but we're stocked at 120. So to do that, we're going to have to feed hay for a month and a half. So we're not just feeding hay to the extra 20 cows when we do this. We're having to feed hay to all 120, right? So we're estimating it's going to be about 180 bales. So the cost per bale in this example will be $100. So there's $18,000 in direct cost associated with having to feed that hay. And we can't really spread that cost out over all of our animals because only 20 of them are responsible, right? Another cow doesn't equal another dollar necessarily, and this is part of that example. We have to have those extra 20 account for the added costs, direct costs to our operation. So it means we're going to have to make $900 per head for the extra 20 cows. And will the profit after we pay for all the indirect costs from those extra 20 cows equal $18,000? Probably not. So just a good example. Another cow doesn't necessarily mean another dollar. A good way to put it, for every month that we are substituting hay on the ranch, we're overstocked by 8.3%. So whatever we plan to feed, right, we take that, and for every month that we feed more than we'd planned, we're overstocked by 8.3%. So it's kind of good to think about that as we look back and maybe do our postmortem after the year. We'll say, well, what if I cut my own hay, right? I'm not spending $100 to bring it in. 1 ton of hay will remove 40 to 60 pounds of nitrogen, 6 pounds of phosphorus, 30 to 50 pounds of potassium. So at today's prices, that's about $60 just worth of nutrients and minerals in a bale of hay. Whether you're cutting it or not, that's the cost. And that's not even talking about your time to cut it, bale it, swath it, all of your equipment, the fuel and everything. So there's a cost there too. much less the fact that that grazing animal is much more efficient of harvesting that hay than that tractor is. So biodiversity is key to a lot of this, right? A lot of our discussion about hay. And because I hear folks say, well, with my forage base, I have to feed hay. Okay. Well, if we can diversify that forage base by adding warm season perennials, if we don't have it, into our system, we're going to improve our soil structure, increase our water infiltration, increase our drought resilience, reduce inputs, and reduce the hay we feed. My buddy Charlie Bescher started introducing, he's in Missouri, and he's in fescue country, started introducing warm season perennials into his operation, and he's reduced his hay, the amount of hay he feeds by 50%. So how do I do? Here's a good tool. Here's a good tip. If you're in this area that you see over here, this is a web application that I've developed called SeedSpec that allows you to develop site-specific custom blends based off your soils. It's for you to put an adapted blend into your area. So there's just a little free tool for y'all to use if you need to scan that QR code. It'll take you to that website. But it's seedspec.com. Okay, Jeff Goodwin will be talking tomorrow, but his Center for Grazing Land Management, he does a great job on social media too, and their center does. But this is a good misconception that I think we all need to keep in mind. Just because I don't graze it doesn't mean I'm wasting it, right? If I'm leaving it, I'm wasting, I grew it, I'm gonna graze it kind of thought. There's value to that standing stubble. There's a lot of value for several reasons. One of them, this is a good example. So again, this is a slide that comes from the Texas Panhandle, but we're talking about 26 inches of rainfall. Our average runoff on good cover is 3 compared to 7, and I'm running out of time, so I'm going to have to kind of get through this. 8 to 11 evaporation. So basically what it's saying, with our 26 inches of rainfall, if we have good cover on the ground, we can grow 3,500 pounds of forage with that. If we have poor cover, it's going to be 1,000 pounds of forage with the same rainfall. That rainfall becomes extremely valuable, right? It's more effective. It's worth more money if I have good cover and able to use more of it. This is a great graph. You have to have a graph if you give a talk, right? So here's my graph. If you look, so we're saying beginning standing forage, right? So January of 2023, this on the bottom graph is how much standing forage we have. And let's say January 1 of 2024, we measured how much forage we produced, right? So what this graph is saying, you can see the more forage we have standing, the more residual cover, the more grass we have, the more forage we're going to produce during the year. And it's really telling. You could see we've got right there 8.5 inches, and the numbers on top are the inches of rain that we got for that year. So for 2023. So you can see 8.5 inches, and we grew almost 3,000 pounds of production. Down here we got 10.2 inches of rain and grew a little bit over 1,000. We doubled our production just by leaving grass to infiltrate the water and to help set the stage for our growing season. So it takes grass to grow grass. That grass that we leave is worth something, and it's worth a lot standing in that field. Technology is a tool. We need to use it, and that's all it is a tool. It's not going to make up for management. But here are a few pieces of technology. This is not an entire list, but these are some great tools to help you capture your data and make good, timely decisions. And being flexible is key. There's no silver bullet. There's no magic beans. There's no magic grass. But adaptability is key to be a successful manager and making timely decisions. So another way to do that is to have trusted advisors. So at NatGLC, one of our goals is to provide technical assistance, right? Get on the ground. And these are some of the ways that we're doing this across the nation. I'll have a link to our website that you can really look at and see what all projects we have going on. But here's some of the things we're doing to try to get technical assistance and boots on the ground as an organization and be of value to grazing land producers. As a matter of fact, we have a project with Florida Cattlemen's Enriched Ag and NCBA24 to help producers train in the use of Enriched Ag tool and help add some value for them to manage their invasive species, habitat management, and cattle production. And it's focused here north of Lake Okeechobee for 50,000 acres to improve those grazings. It's a 2-year project. So we just mentioned, we've got that going on right here in the area. If that's any interest, our booth is right over here. There'll be people in there stop by and visit about it. December 4th through 6th of this year is our 9th Grazing conference in Tucson, Arizona. You can register right there. It's a great conference. The majority of the talks are from producers about their place and about what they're doing, so it's a great tool and great networking. That's a link to our website and talk about what we're doing. It has all the different projects and things that we have going on also if you're interested. Give everybody a little bit of time to get that. And then we're in booth 984 over here if anybody would like to come by and visit about some of the things we discussed. Ryan, we got time for a few questions or?
Absolutely.
Any questions? Sorry, rushed through a little bit of that there at the end. No questions? Yes, sir.
So you talk about substitution. When you put that substitute out there, are those animals going to leave that land alone so it can recover while you're substituting?
No, they're not. You're having an impact. Even if you're feeding, if you're substituting, to get those 20 extra head, like in our example, we're still overgrazing. We're still having an impact on our land that we're going to have to manage or overcome in some way. Good question.
You mentioned photo points. How do you go about picking quality photo points?
So I think a lot of it has to do with what we're trying to measure. So if we have a goal that we want to improve a specific area, of course we measure that. Outside of that, I think we need to find a representative area that kind of represents and is kind of the average of the pasture that we're trying to measure for whatever measure, but representative of the area, not the worst plot, not the best spot, something that's kind of representative and accessible that we're going to be able to get to. That's a big deal too. If we're in a big pasture and it's not accessible and it takes time and effort to get to it, a lot of times we won't do it. So that's kind of what I try to do with my photo points. That answer your question?
Any other questions? All right, let's give Mr. Cook a round of applause.
Thank you.